College baseball polling can get a little confusing at times. Unlike in basketball and football, where there's the Associated Press Top 25, baseball has a hodgepodge of rankings. While the AP Top 25 may be much maligned and criticized frequently, as is the college football playoff rankings and the whole show presenting it, at least it's a standard number. In baseball, there's so many polls, one from pretty much every media outlet, whether it's Baseball America, D1 Baseball, Perfect Game, Collegiate Baseball, the list just goes on. As a result, every sports information director at the respective schools are going to claim the highest number for their team. So you get things like this from last March 4th to be exact, where Tennessee is claiming the number 6 mark, but Texas, who beat them, is referring to the Volunteers as the 17th ranked team. Meanwhile, on that same day, Stanford is also the number 6 team, dropping their opener. You get the point. However, while the system may be fundamentally flawed, there shouldn't be 3 number 6 teams, nor should teams need slashes to indicate the positioning in an assortment of polls, much less 4 slashes. It does provide one valuable thing, a general sense of a team's positioning. There will always be outliers, the one poll that views a team a heck of a lot different than the other, but at least they're included. So where am I going with this? If you take a look at every national champion since the year 2000, one thing rings true. Each and every one was ranked in the top 25 of at least one poll, if not all of them, at the start of the season. Yes, even upstart Coastal Carolina came in at number 23 in a pair of polls before their 2016 title. And Fresno State, the longest shot, I think you would assume over the last 20 years, was Baseball America's preseason number 18 team in 2008. And of course, last season, many people were keen to point out that Ole Miss was the last team in the field of 64, but most of those people also know that the Rebels were in the top 10 in 4 of 5 polls. While people can nitpick the rankings and assortment of teams and the different orders, chances are that this next group of 31 teams, which appear in at least one of the national polls, contains the 2023 national champion. With that in mind, we're going to go through each of these 31 teams that appeared on at least one national ranking this preseason. For each team, we'll do a quick recap of last year, look at who they lost, who they added, and pick a hitter and a pitcher that they'll need big years out of. Let's start in my favorite tier, the 9th tier. These are teams that, only appeared in one poll, but that counts. At number 31, we've got Georgia Tech, who was 23rd in the collegiate baseball poll. The Yellow Jackets were 36-24 last year, with a lineup that had 5 draft picks, including the 11th overall selection and catcher Kevin Parada. The 6.58 team ERA doomed Georgia Tech to another regional exit, one they're likely set to repeat if they don't address the glaring hole on the mound. Parada, Chandler Simpson, Trez Gonzalez, and Andrew Jenkins are all big departures in the lineup, while the staff saw the top 4 in innings leave as well. The latter might not be a bad thing. On the mound, big question is, can Logan McGuire step up into that number 1 role? He looked fantastic for Newport in the NECBL. 44 strikeouts and 6 walks is impressive for anybody, much less a rising sophomore. Offensively, there's of course some pieces back, but it'll be newcomer Angelo Despigna that I'm looking at to step up. He raked at Mercer, 100 plus total bases in each of his 3 full years, and he could enjoy similar success. Alright, at number 30 we've got South Carolina, who came in at 23rd on D1 Baseball's rankings, but didn't appear elsewhere. The Gamecocks finished a game under 500 last year, missing the NCAA tournament for the 4th time in the last 7 seasons, but they did manage to take weekend series from Texas, Vanderbilt, and Ole Miss. It was a weird 27-28 season for South Carolina, but with a series of additions to the lineup and some high-end pitching, the 2023 version of the Gamecocks should be much, much better. Offensively, Braylon Wimmer headlines the returnees and will be joined by a group of transfers. Oral Roberts' Caleb Denny, Clemson's Dylan Brewer, Vanderbilt's Gavin Casas, and Southern Miss's Will McGillis. South Carolina's strength is on the mound, though, where Will Sanders and Noah Hall are a well-established 1-2 punch. The name to get to know is Jack Mahoney, who was injured last year, but he was a midweek starter as a freshman in 2021. He's coming off Tommy John, but his fastball's up to 97 and has 3 good secondary pitches. He should be counted on as a number 3, and if he is as good as expected, that 1-2-3 punch could be fantastic for South Carolina. Offensively, it's a less star-studded lineup, but one guy that the Gamecocks are looking to rise to the occasion is center fielder Evan Stone. He had just 184 and 87 at-bats last spring, but he flashed some potential in the Northwoods League this summer. He had a 716 OPS and swiped 7 bags in 25 games. Next up, we've got number 29 Mississippi State, who came in at 22nd in collegiate baseball's poll. You want to talk about a championship hangover? The Bulldogs went from the highest point in the college baseball world to winning just 9 SEC games, finishing 9-21, and 4 games under 500 overall. Mississippi State was last in the conference in ERA at 6.07, and they also lost 4 of its top 5 hitters, RJ Yeager, Cameron James, Brad Cumbest, and Logan Tanner. That doesn't seem like a strong base for 2023, but the Bulldogs do return quite a few guys, and they added plenty of experience in the transfer portal. Cade Smith is going to anchor the rotation, and then you've got, Hunter Hines, Kellum Clark, and Luke Hancock that are strong pieces in the lineup. Adding Colton Ledbetter, Dakota Jordan, and Connor Hughesjack, and you have a pretty solid offense. Improvements on the mound will hinge on the likes of Parker Stinnett, who dealt with an injury last year but has a fastball up to 95 and a nasty breaking ball. In the lineup, one key guy that will need to make the jump to the SEC smoothly is second baseman Amani Larry. He could hit leadoff after posting a .477 on-base percentage with New Orleans last year. He also had 9 home runs and 16 stolen bases, so quite the power-speed addition. My favorite team in these rankings is probably this one. Number 28, UC Santa Barbara, who is all the way up at 14th in collegiate baseball. And this isn't much of a surprise. Last year, the Gauchos were 17th in this same poll. In 2021, they were 8th. This year, they're 14th, and the collegiate baseball poll remains the biggest supporter of them. It's somewhat surprising, as the Gauchos lost 2 of 3 weekend starters and 7 of 10 regular starters, but UCSB has been pretty consistent. They won the Big West with ease last year, going 27-3 in conference play, but losses to Texas State and Stanford in the regionals knocked them out. They do have quite a bit of young talent this season, but there's still some veteran pop, guys like Christian Kirtley and Brock Mortensen. Offensively, one guy that needs to click for the Gauchos is shortstop Nick Oakley, who's moving there from second, I believe. He's one of the few returnees and has a career .719 OPS, but could be in line for a big junior year. On the mound, Gutierrez and Gallagher are back, but the biggest returnee may very well be 6'4" southpaw Carter Benbrook. He didn't pitch last year due to injury. Benbrook struck out 62 in 53 innings with 5 saves across 25 relief appearances back in 2021. And if he has a good year, the Gauchos pitching staff should be pretty strong. All right, we're moving on up to teams that appear in multiple polls. We'll call this one Building Confidence, as more than one poll believes in these teams. At number 27, we've got Alabama, who's all the way up at 20th and 25th in a pair of polls. This may just be me, but it feels like Alabama is a lot of people's sleeper pick in 2023. They're as high as 20th in D1 Baseball's poll, which isn't exactly a sleeper, but they missed out in quite a few other ones. And it's probably because in 2021, they went 12-17 in the SEC, taking weekends against Texas A&M, Ole Miss, and Arkansas, but missed the NCAA tournament when the bubble restricted some. A big reason they're well regarded this year is because they have depth and experience. The Tide are returning the bulk of their lineup and innings. Sure, Zane Denton transferring to Tennessee hurts, and Owen Diodati's off to Oregon, but they brought in some promising transfers like Matt Gaschetti from Florida and Ed Johnson from Tennessee Tech. After that, it's all returnees, whether it's Andrew Pinckney, Drew Williamson, or Caden Rose. Pinckney will need to have a big season. He's the top returning player after taking a big jump in 2022 when he posted an .883 OPS in 58 games, but he hit just .240 on the Cape this summer with a concerning 39 strikeouts in 35 games. Cutting back on those while delivering on his offensive potential is going to be crucial, especially when Denton, who is the RBI leader, is gone. As for a pitcher, it's probably the headliner Grayson Hitt that the Tide need to succeed the most. Throws 97 with a cutter and a curve, but has a career 6.61 ERA over 79 collegiate innings. He'll be looking to deliver on his potential as well. At number 26, we've got Texas. Wasn't always smooth sailing, but Texas returned to Omaha for the second year in a row. The Longhorns were one of the top 2 teams in the preseason and made it by sweeping their own regional before coming from behind to take 2 of 3 in East Carolina and Supers. They were 2-0 in Omaha, though, and lost quite a bit in the offseason. This list includes Golden Spikes winner Ivan Melendez, Pete Hansen, Silas Ardoin, Douglas Hodo, Trey Faltine, Murphy Staley, Tristan Stevens, and more. They did bring in some interesting pieces, transfers Porter Brown from TCU, Garrett Guillemette from USC, Tanner Carlson, and then a dynamic freshman in Jalen Flores. The question marks are pretty clear. Lucas Gordon is a proven arm, but after him, what is this Texas staff going to look like? Zane Morehouse, who's got a fastball up into the mid-90s, was primarily a reliever last year, but struck out 43 in 39 innings. A move to the rotation is exciting for him, and the Longhorns are hoping it can alleviate the loss of Hanson Stevens, and of course Tanner Witt, who may or may not come back this year. Offensively, with so many departures and newcomers, a few returnees will need to step up, none more so than Mitchell Daly. Daly was fantastic as a freshman, posting an .829 OPS and 15 doubles, but his numbers slipped as a sophomore. Getting the most out of him in year 3 can make all the difference on what is arguably a thinner roster than years prior. And at number 25, we've got Auburn. It seems foolish at this point that Auburn is here, consistently underappreciated in the preseason polls. Tigers won 42 games and reached Omaha last season. They bring back Joseph Gonzalez and Chase Alsop in the weekend rotation, and have Cole Foster, Kaysen Howell, and Nate LaRue back. Sure, there's no All-American hitter like Sonny DeShiera, and 5 pitchers got drafted: Burkhalter, Barnett, Bright, Skipper, and Mullins, but Auburn has proven it time and time again. While they weren't ranked in last year's polls, they are this year, but a successful season will hinge on incorporating something like 24 new players and having Alsop and Foster take it to the next level. Foster broke out and hit .270 with 9 home runs as a sophomore after not playing much as a freshman, so an excellent junior year will be big for the Tigers, while Alsop will be counted on to make the move from the bullpen, where he struck out 36 in 29 innings, to a weekend starter role. And at number 24, we've got Oregon State. Feels weird for Oregon State to not be higher after winning 48 games and going to the Supers, but they lost quite a bit. Wade Meckler, Justin Boyd, and Jacob Melton on offense, then ace Cooper Jerpy along with Brock Townsend, Jake Fennigs, and more. Still, the Beavers bring back the talented duo of Travis Bazzana and Garrett Forrester, easily 2 of the better hitters in the Pac-12. They'll add freshman Gavin Turley to the mix. He's an intriguing addition. He made it to campus after going in the 19th round of the MLB draft. One returnee that Oregon State needs to take the next step in 2023 is shortstop Kyle Durned, who posted a .590 OPS last year. He's a fantastic defender, and a strong offensive campaign would do wonders for the Beavers' team ceiling. On the mound, Jacob Kmatz, who made 15 starts and had a 4.19 ERA as a freshman, is now the Friday guy. There's veterans like Ben Farrer and Jaron Hunter on the staff, but Kmatz will need to jump to the number 1 starter role in place of Jerpy. All right, on to Tier 7. We'll call this one Collegiate Baseball Doubts You. These next 2 teams are ranked in every poll except for Collegiate Baseballs, and by Collegiate Baseballs, I've cut them off at their top 25, as this poll was apparently preoccupied with some longer shots like UCSB. Number 23, we've got NC State. The Wolfpack went 36-21, but were a surprising omission from the NCAA tournament last year. It was a shocking snub for what was a pretty strong NC State side, but head coach Elliot Avon is right back at it. As is often the case, they reloaded after losing the likes of Devontae Brown, Josh Hood, JT Jarrett, Chris Villeman, and of course Tommy White to LSU. They brought in Davidson's Parker Nolan and Trevor Candelaria, as well as Old Dominion's Carter Trice and Oregon's Rio Britton in the portal. Thrown in exciting freshman in Eli Serrano, and there's a lot of new faces to be excited for. NC State's ceiling will depend on its returners, though. A pair of starters and their injury history will have the biggest impact: Sam Highfill and Matt Willitson. They're both injured last year, but are needed to return in top form to pace this staff. Offensively, replacing Jarrett's tough at second, much like his dad, Link. He has got high baseball IQ and kind of the what you might say the quarterback of that NC State infield. Texas A&M's Kaylee Harrison is pegged to replace him there, which, not small shoes to fill. Other than Serrano, Harrison has the shortest resume on the Wolfpack and will need to step up. In at number 22, also unranked in collegiate baseball's top 25, Virginia Tech. Maybe it's an ACC thing. The other team ignored in their top 25 was the Hokies, who rebounded from a disappointing end to the 2021 campaign by going 45-14 and making their first Super. I wouldn't be surprised if this Hokie side reached similar heights. It's particularly deep, especially after off-season additions. The losses are steep, though. Nick Biddison, Tanner Schobel, Gavin Cross, Kate Hunter, and more, but it's still a veteran group that was supplemented by transfers. You've got experienced bats like David Bryant, Chris Cannizzaro, and Eddie Eisert, and you're pairing that with high-end draft guys like Jack Hurley, Carson DeMartini, and Carson Jones. Jones is the hitter to watch. He slugged 8 home runs in 67 plate appearances last year, posting a remarkable 1.239 OPS. Replicating that pace is improbable, but he's going to need to make the most of an expanded role. On the mound, Drew Hackenberg and Griffin Green are a fantastic duo, and some key relievers are back. So newcomer Anthony Arguelles from Miami is a guy to keep an eye on. Despite not being a weekend starter in his collegiate career thus far, he could slot in on Sundays. Having starting pitching depth is important for the ACC, especially if you have a good bullpen to keep him rested, so that's something to keep an eye on. On to Tier 6. Consensus ranked. Finally, consensus top 25 teams. These next 4, unlike their predecessors, appeared in every poll we chose. At 21, we've got Oregon. I really like this Oregon team. Last year, the Ducks had to revamp its weekend rotation, replace a trio of productive hitters, and they still won 36 games, and got a win in the NCAA tournament. The Ducks should be a very solid team again this year, particularly defensively, and they have a pretty good young core of pitching. They'll need to replace Brendan Malone, Josh Kasevich, and Anthony Hall, but they've got intriguing pieces back like Tanner Smith and Colby Shade. They also brought in Owen Diodati from Alabama, and some interesting junior college guys in Riku Nishida and Sabin Ceballos. It hurts that the projected number one starter, Isaac Aon, is out for a few months, and it means a guy like Logan Mercado, who was a reliever last year, is going to need to eat up more innings. He had a 41-12 K to walk ratio in 41 innings last year, and transitioning to the rotation seems to be in store. And then offensively, Diodati is the bat that could really make this Ducks lineup go. We know what we're getting from the core position group, but Diodati is an addition who hit 242 last year, but could take the next step with the change in scenery. At number 20, we've got Texas Tech. For the first time since 2017, Texas Tech didn't reach Super Regionals. They fell to Notre Dame at Georgia Southern's regional, but it was another strong year. Of course, quite a few prolific departures this offseason. Jace Young, Cole Stillwell, Kurt Wilson, Easton Morrell, Andrew Morris, Brandon Birdsell, the list goes on. Still, they have a strong core of veterans back, most notably Hudson White, Dylan Carter, Ty Coleman, and Owen Washburn in the lineup, while Mason Molina, Brendan Gurton, and Kyle Robinson is a pretty strong rotation. Molina was fantastic as a freshman, but Gurton was a guy who was limited to just 17 innings last year. He did strike out 18 and held opponents to a 159 batting average, but the Red Raiders are going to need more out of him this year if they're going to lean on excellent pitching. Offensively, it's Carter, who struck out 73 times and hit just 199 a year ago, who will need to produce more at the plate. Newcomers Gavin Cash, Tracer Lopez, and Drew Woodcocks will need to make the transition to Tech as well, but Carter is one of the returnees with lower numbers last year. In at number 19 is Southern Miss. First College World Series appearance since 2009 wasn't meant to be. The Golden Eagles were the number 15 national seed, hosted and fought past LSU in dramatic fashion, then ran into a buzzsaw. They were outscored 15-0 in 2 games against eventual national champions Ole Miss. Game 1 starter of that super, Hurston Waldrop, headed off to Florida after, while key pieces like Gabe Montenegro, Will McGillis, Dalton Rogers, Landon Harper, and Hunter Riggins all moved on as well. This USM side does have an experienced lineup in 2023 though, and an unproven but likely talented pitching staff. Tanner Hall is elite, that's for sure. But number 2 Matt Adams, who had a 6.60 ERA in 23 innings last year, will need to take a big step forward. He had an excellent 32-6 K to walk ratio, which is definitely promising. Offensively, you've got the likes of Dustin Dickerson, Tennessee Tech's Gabe Lacey, Chris Sargent, Carson Paytow, and more. It's an old group, but one newcomer that USM is counting on in a big way is center fielder Matthew Etzel. Junior college transfer Etzel has probably been highlighted in every breakout player or transfer list you can think of. If he clicks in seamlessly with the rest of this lineup, it could be quite the group to back what should be a strong pitching staff. In at number 18, we've got Virginia. The Cavaliers went 39-19 last year. An excellent record, but it did kind of feel like a letdown. UVA had lofty expectations and didn't quite reach them before watching a plethora of talented pieces depart. The likes of Ortiz, Tappan, Newell, Anderson, Codier, Savino, Neek, Gursky, a laundry list of talented players. So with 20 newcomers outnumbering the returnees, should be a pretty interesting 2023 campaign. Strength of this club, once again, will probably be offense, and part of that depends on what we get out of Kyle Teal from behind the plate. He's one of the most exciting players in baseball, but, as a freshman in 54 games, he had a 940 OPS and saw that dip last year by 100 points, and as a sophomore. He's an elite talent, but a big junior year could really power this Cavaliers team. Virginia is losing 70% of its innings, so one returnee, Jake Berry, will need to have a big year. He struck out 69 in 56 innings last year, splitting time between the rotation and the bullpen. The Southpaw will need to assume a starter's workload to guide this pitching staff. All right, we're on to the 5th tier. We'll just call this one Pick to Win Their Conference by Coaches or Media. Not a great tier name, but these 3 teams should win the American, the Big Ten, and the coaches picked them to win the Big 12. At number 17, we've got East Carolina. It was a weird 2022 year for them. They were swept by Bryant to start the year and were just a single game over 500 at the turn of April before going something like 33-8 the rest of the year. They went 20-4 in the AAC, hosted and won a regional as a top 8 seed, but then saw their season end painfully against Texas. They took the first game of the Super Regional and then dropped the next 2 in a pretty heartbreaking fashion. A lot of familiar ECU names are gone. Mayhew, Kukmaner, Giles, Agnos, and Worrell. But this is a deep pitching staff and a lineup with a lot of promise. Lane Hoover and Jacob Jenkins Cohart are the names to know, as is Alec Makarowicz. He had double-digit home runs last year. Josh Moylan is the hitter I'm going to highlight here. He was fantastic as a freshman, posting an 869 OPS, but hit just 220 as a sophomore with a 770 OPS. They're going to need a return to previous heights for him to help pace the lineup. On the mound, Carter Spivey and Josh Gross are a pretty solid 1-2 punch. Spivey was last year's AAC Pitcher of the Year, primarily out of the bullpen. So keep an eye on projected closer Tyler Bratt, a transfer from VMI. He has a fastball up to 96 with a strong breaking ball and a changeup. With Spivey in the rotation after 33 relief appearances last year, the Pirates are going to need a stopper, and Bratt could fill that role. To the Big Ten we go with number 16, Maryland. Last year, first regular season title since 71. First time hosting a regional. It was quite the season for the Terrapins, who figured to only run him back this year. They lost Chris Allen and Troy Schreffler, but added Eddie Hakopoian, Elijah Lambros, and Matt Woods to an experienced lineup that's highlighted by Luke Schlager and Matt Shaw, along with a host of promising bats and veteran bats. On the mound, they've got Nick Dean and Jason Savacool, the latter who struck out 123 in 107 innings. The hitting is plus, particularly in terms of the power, but they'll need Lambros, a transfer from South Carolina, to make the jump to everyday contributor. He had just 42 plate appearances with the Gamecocks last year and hit 150 with 12 strikeouts. Another newcomer that'll be counted on in a big way is freshman Kyle McCoy, who could be in the weekend rotation for the Terrapins. 6'5" southpaw with an upper 80s, low 90s fastball and a changeup and a slider. If he can join Dean and Savacool in having strong years, that's a strong rotation trio that should breeze through the Big Ten. And finally, in at number 15, wrap up this tier, we've got TCU. They won the Big 12 last year and didn't host a regional, mostly because of RPI issues. They ended up falling to Texas A&M at the College Station Regional. They lost quite a few pieces, Tommy Sacco and pitchers Riley Cornelio, Brett Walker, and Marcelo Perez, but I don't think it'd be a surprise to many if they were better this year. They're picked to win their third straight regular season crown. The lineup has a lot of veterans, including Luke Boyers, Elijah Nunez, David Bishop, and then of course the star, Braden Taylor. And the Horned Frogs brought in Austin Davis from West Virginia, Baylor's Trey Richardson, and a strong junior college transfer in Cole Fontenelle. And then on the mound, it's another year of experience for the likes of Cam Brown and Luke Savage, while Kansas's Ryan Vanderhey is a big addition. The key piece for TCU's lineup and defense, arguably, in 2023 might very well be freshman Anthony Silva. Sacco led the team in OPS and home runs last year, but Silva is highly regarded and could be a breakout freshman of the year candidate. On the mound, TCU's fate may well be shouldered by Cam Brown, who's the top returning by innings pitched, but will need to cut down on walks and reach his tremendous potential. Alright, on to Tier 4. We'll call this one Should Be Pretty Dang Good. I couldn't think of a better title. It's just a trio of teams bringing back a lot of talent, and they should be pretty good. At number 14, we've got Miami. The Hurricanes started last season 27-6, locked up a number 6 national seed, and promptly exited on their home turf. Granted, one of the losses was to eventual national champion Ole Miss, but it was yet another disappointing year for Miami. They haven't been back to Omaha since 2016. This year, there's a lot of familiar faces in the lineup and rotation, making this an intriguing season for the Hurricanes. Jacob Burke and Maxwell Romero are the two lineup departures, while Carson Palmquist, Jake Garland, and Alex McFarland are gone from the staff. But it's something like 20 returnees and a lot of depth. The Hurricanes have the best closer in the country, arguably in Andrew Walters, and should be strong offensively. With the likes of CJ Kafis, Yohandy Morales, and Dominic Patelli, the lineup will be good, but outfielder Jacoby Long will need to take a step forward in place of Burke, who was second on the team in OPS. Long hit just 250 last year in 54 plate appearances and will be taking on a bigger role. Moving roles is something that could also be the case for Gage Zeal, who made 30 appearances as a reliever his freshman year, but figures to be in the weekend rotation this season. He had nasty stuff, 52 strikeouts in 35 innings, but you never know how that transition is going to go. It did work out just fine for Palmquist last year, though. On to number 13, UCLA. 10 players were drafted off of the 2021 UCLA team, setting the stage for a youthful roster in 2022. And despite freshmen being everywhere on the team leaderboard, 2 of the top 3 in plate appearances, 3 of the top 6 in innings pitched, UCLA still won 40 games and reached a regional final. Now, big things are expected for the Bruins in 2023, even, with Jake Palmer, Michael Corelli, and Kenny Oyama in the lineup gone, as well as Max Rogic leaving the rotation. UCLA had a top 20 pitching staff last year in Massey ratings, and it should be pretty similar this year. They've got Jake Brooks and Alonzo Treadwell headlining the rotation. Probable number 3 starter, Southpaw Ethan Flanagan, split time between the rotation and bullpen, and could be a deciding factor in the staff. He had the most innings of any freshman last year. Offensively, Cody Schreier, Deuce Gorson, Kyle Karras, and more are back in the lineup. And so the guy that the Bruins will be looking to break out is John Vaughns, career .211 hitter who struck out 34% of the time in his 232 career plate appearances. Vaughns is probably one of the potential holes in this lineup that will need to improve offensively from last year. UCLA finished 80th in runs scored in 2022, a mark that they cannot repeat if they're to go far. We'll close out this tier with number 12, Carolina. For a chunk of last season, the postseason wasn't looking like a possibility. They went 5-11 in April and were just 8-13 in ACC play at the end of the month. They closed the year strong, going 10-2 in May. They won 4 straight at the ACC tourney to win that, and then they went on to reach the Supers, where they fell to Arkansas. It was quite the run for the Tar Heels, who lost a lot on the mound. Brandon Schaefer, Davis Palermo, Gage Gillian, Sean Rapp, and then key pieces in the lineup like Angel Zarate, Danny Soretti, and Mikey Majej. Like Miami, though, you got to look at this lineup and feel pretty confident. You got guys like Vance Honeycutt, Matt Horvath, Alberto Osuna, Thomas Frick. That's a lot of guys that have been around. Honeycutt in particular, All-American potential. One hitter that could end up being pretty important is Max Reamer, who's only got 58 career at-bats, and he might be being penciled into left field. Then on the mound, we know what we're going to get from Max Carlson, but it's the number 2, Connor Bovair, that will need a big season. He walked 32 in 54 innings last year, so cutting that down will be important to go deep into games. We move on to Tier 3. We'll just say solid contenders. Solid might be an understatement. These next 6 teams include the defending champion, the 2 ACC favorites, and another potential Big 12 winner. At number 11, we've got Oklahoma State, arguably the most consistent team in the entire Big 12. Oklahoma State went to its 9th straight regional last season and exited in a ridiculous manner, falling to Arkansas in what was an insane offensive-heavy Stillwater regional. While the Cowboys lost a lot, the likes of Justin Campbell, Victor Medeiros, Caden Trankel, and Griffin Dorshin, they also brought back third-rounder Nolan McLean and a positional group that can stack up with most. Junior college transfer Tyler Wolfert and a pair of freshmen in Nolan Schubert and Bo Sylvester are the only additions in the lineup, with Marcus Brown, Rock Riggio, David Mendham, Zach Earhart, and McLean forming quite the core. On the mound, Oklahoma State brought in Jerron Watts-Brown from Long Beach State and BYU's Jansen Keisel. There's some uncertainty on the mound, which is why Keisel's the player spotlighted. He has an upper 90s fastball and a good slider, but he only threw 46 innings a year ago and will be called upon for more this year. Offensively, the guy's McLean. Not only is he the team's closer, he's the starting right fielder, most likely if he moves from third. He desperately needs to cut down on his strikeouts. He posted a near 37% K rate last year. That's up from 28% in a freshman. While his OPS climbed to 992 thanks to 19 home runs, he can only take another big step forward by reducing those K numbers. At number 10, we've got the defending national champions. They're the first of 6 SEC schools in our countdown of the final 10, and they had a whirlwind of a season. The Rebels were a preseason, top 5 team, struggled, fought back, and then erased a 7-14 SEC record to become the last team in the field of 64 and make a run to the national championship. Now, with an older lineup and strong transfers, Ole Miss might be underrated. T1 Baseball put together its annual position player rankings, and the Rebels were the only team with someone on each list. Calvin Harris behind the plate, Northwestern transfer Anthony Calerico at first, Peyton Chatanier at second, Jacob Gonzalez at short, JUCO transfer Ethan Ledge at third, and Kemp Alderman, TJ McCants, and Tulane's Ethan Groff in the outfield. Of that group, McCants has the most to prove. He took a step back last year, watching his batting average go down to 236 from 300. He was still productive, turned in a 734 OPS, but it wasn't what many expected for year 2. Of course, the question mark with the Rebels is a young pitching staff. They'll need to get the most out of Grayson Sanier and Sam Tucoin, a pair of talented freshman arms that will be expected to play big roles immediately. At number 9, we've got Louisville, one of 2 preseason favorites to win the ACC. It was another strong year last year for the Cardinals as they bounced back from missing the tournament in 2021. They won 41 games, won the ACC Atlantic, hosted a regional, and reached Supers. Now a core of guys that are about as Louisville as you can get are gone. Ben Metzinger, Levi Usher, Cam Masterman, Dalton Rushing, Michael Persecki, Jared Poland. But if you tried to place a wager on Dan McDonald not finding the next crop of talented guys to replace them, no bookie would take it. Jack Payton, Isaac Humphrey, Christian Knapsick, and Logan Beard are all back to anchor the lineup, But then you have guys like Eddie King and Will Cook, both red shirts that should have strong years, knowing Louisville's history. The hitter needed most to settle in quickly is probably first baseman Ryan McCoy, a 6'4" left-handed hitter from Wabash Valley Community College. He's got power and speed, clearing 15 in both home runs and stolen bases. Another junior college transfer expected to have a big impact is Greg Ferrone. He's a southpaw from Herkimer County. Ferrone could be a midweek guy or pile up innings elsewhere. I'm not sure what his role will be, but he piled up awards at junior level. He struck out 74 in 43 innings, good for a 15.5 K per 9. At number 8, we've got Vanderbilt. Last year, the Commodores had an elite pitching staff. They were third in Massey ratings, but a 20th ranked offense, and they fell in regional finals. 2021, the same story. They had the number 2 pitching staff, but the number 45 offense. The key to their national title in 2019 was an offense that was on par with the staff, but that'll be a question once again in 2023. They lost offensive stalwarts Dominic Keegan and Spencer Jones, and while they added Duke's RJ Schreck and still have the All-American talent in Enrique Bradfield Jr., they're going to need steps forward from quite a few players. One in particular is Davis Diaz. Second baseman hit just .213 as a freshman, but had some promise with 36 walks to 37 strikeouts. Could have a breakout season and really add another element to the Commodores lineup. On the mound, Vandy, as you might expect, is in great shape. Carter Holton was electric as a freshman, while Andrew Dukanich figures to star in his first year on campus. One arm in particular could be fantastic for Vandy in 2023, righty Sam Hlaboki, who's back from Tommy John. 35 career innings for the Commodores. He has a 36-6 K to walk ratio. Granted, Vandy has another great starter in Devin Futrell, but if Hlaboki can click, this rotation could be, or should be, one of the best in the country. At number 7, we go back to the ACC with Wake Forest. Is this finally the year? Sure seems like it. Last year wasn't for the Demon Deacons, who won 41 games but bowed out in regionals on the road in Maryland. This year, they have all the big names. Brock Wilken, Nick Kurtz in the lineup, Rhett Lauder, Teddy McGraw in the rotation. They lost Brendan Tinsman and Michael Turconi, but otherwise the lineup's intact. Turconi's departure is a big one. He started 163 games in his career at Wake, and they're going to be turning most likely to Lafayette transfer Justin Johnson. He didn't play last year due to injury, so it'll be interesting to see him slot into this high-profile lineup. After Lauder and McGraw in the rotation, it's Josh Hartle, a left-hander who made 14 starts as a freshman and had a 5.3 ERA. If Wake's to go to the next level, finally make that run, Hartle reaching his ceiling, something like he turned in on the Cape when he had 13 strikeouts and 0 walks in 17 innings, would be a big part of that. Final team in this tier is Arkansas, and it was an up and down 2023 season for the Razorbacks. They started well, hit some road bumps, and limped into the NCAA tournament. They lost their last 2 SEC series and went winless at the tournament. But it bounced back pretty quickly. The Razorbacks won a dramatic Stillwater Regional, made it all the way to Omaha. The lineup, both offensively and defensively, was crushed after that. Wallace, Moore, Turner, Battles, Lanzilli, it's a long list of names gone. Pitching staff figures to be strong this year, but figuring out where the runs are going to come from is definitely an open question. Transfers Hudson Polk, John Bolton, Tavian Josenberger, Caleb Colley, and Jared Wegner are all new. But one bat that Arkansas really needs to elevate to the next level is Jace Borfin. We touched on him in another video. He's a high-profile transfer. Hit just .228 last year with Arkansas. On the mound, there was some late breaking news. Actually had to cut into this with this news. Jackson Wiggins, expected to play a big role in the rotation, is out for the 2023 season after suffering a torn UCL. So figuring out how best to manage those arms is going to be a big thing for Dave Van Horn this year. He's got Hagen Smith, Will McIntyre, Brady Tigert. Could be McIntyre, could be Hunter Holen moving into the rotation. Whoever it is, there's now a pretty big question hanging over the Razorback staff in 2023. Tier 2, we'll just go with Omaha or bust. This next tier is a group of 4 teams that are consensus top 5 or so. So Omaha or bust seems pretty fitting. 3 of these 4 are SEC teams. We'll start with number 5, Texas A&M. Separating these teams is going to be kind of difficult, but Texas A&M reloaded on the fly and has quite the team assembled this year. They used the portal. Jim Schlossnagle used the portal very well in 2022. They won the SEC West and were one of the Final Four teams standing. They're aiming to do the same thing this year. Gone is Dylan Rock, Cole Kaler, Troy Clonch, Micah Dallas, and Jacob Palish, but in comes 25 plus newcomers to supplement a pretty good returning core. Jack Moss, Austin Boast, Trevor Werner, and ASU transfer Hunter Haas make up an excellent infield, while freshman Jace LaViolette joins Jordan Thompson and Brett Minish in the outfield. On the mound, it's Nathan Detmer, Purdue's Troy Wansing, and Chris Cortez. The Aggies are going to make a similar run as last year. Haas at short is going to have a big year. He had a 581 OPS in the Cape this year. Granted, he was getting back up to speed after missing a big chunk of the season before due to injury, but the Aggies are hoping he can return to his freshman year numbers. Another important piece is Cortez, who was a relief pitcher primarily last year, but figures to slide into the rotation. He can get up to 99 miles an hour on the fastball, so the potential is definitely there, and if he can channel it, this A&M rotation could be pretty strong. At number 4, another SEC team, we've got Florida. Gators had a shaky start last year. They lost 4 of its first 6 series in SEC play, but they got hot at the right time. They took the next 4 series, won 4 games at the SEC tournament, and promptly exited in the regional round. They lost to Oklahoma twice. The Gators saw Sterling Thompson, Judd Fabian, Hunter Barco, and Nick Pogue depart, but they reloaded and looked stronger than they did a season ago. Hurston Waldrop, who we touched on earlier, is a big transfer addition and pairs particularly nicely with Brandon Sproat. That's a 1-2 punch that stacks up with pretty much anyone. Junior college transfer Tyler Shelnut and freshman Cade Kurland arrive in the infield. But one big question mark's in the outfield. Redshirt freshman Michael Robertson was hurt last year, but is slated to play alongside Wyatt Langford and Ty Evans. He's 6'2", got excellent speed, and should be a big contributor in 23. On the mound, after Sproat and Waldrop, Pierce Coppola is a sophomore left-hander who throws up to 98, but he only threw 4 in the 3rd innings last year, but could rise to the Sunday starter role and give the Gators quite the trio. At number 3, we've got Stanford. It's been back-to-back Omaha appearances for the Cardinal, but they've gone just 1-4 in the College World Series. Still, it's no small feat to go to Omaha in consecutive years, and Stanford has once again put together a team that would not be a surprise to be in Omaha. They have holes from last year. Brock Jones, Brett Barrera, Cody Huff, and Adam Crampton are in the lineup. Alex Williams on the staff are gone, but if anything, they've proven pretty adept at reloading. It helps, of course, when you have the likes of Carter Graham, Tommy Troy, Eddie Park, Braden Montgomery, Quinn Matthews, Drew Dowd, and more. That's a group that probably includes the player and pitcher of the year in the Pac-12. It's felt like Stanford has always had a good next man up mentality, and that'll be needed. At short, Trevor Haskins is a guy to step up and replace Crampton and form an up-the-middle pairing with Troy. Haskins only had 14 at-bats as a freshman, but had a strong summer with Eau Claire in the Northwoods League, and will be leaned on. On the mound, Stanford has no shortage of aces, and Ty Uber will be looking to build off a strong freshman year. Uber had 49 strikeouts to 26 walks in 48 innings with a 4.99 ERA, and that was between the bullpen and rotation, so switching over to the rotation and taking a big step in innings is going to be big for him. At number 2, we've got Tennessee wrapping up this tier. 57 wins, 9 losses, 25-5 in the SEC. The Volunteers are one of the best teams in NCAA history last year, but were upset in the Super Regionals by Notre Dame. And despite a plethora of draft picks, Gilbert, Beck, Tidwell, Lipscomb, Joyce, Mabry, Ortega, Stevenson, McLaughlin, Lawson, Tennessee still has the best rotation in the country and reloaded offensively. Starts with the 3-headed monster of Chase DeLander, Chase Burns, and Drew Beam, who all won 8+ games and had sub-3 ERAs a year ago. Offensively, Christian Moore, Jared Dickey, Blake Burke are back in the lineup, and high-profile transfers like Maui Ahuna, Griffin Merritt, and Zane Denton should have big years. One guy that the Volunteers will need to click is everyone's favorite breakout player from a year ago, Kyle Booker, who didn't win a starting job in the outfield, ended up hitting just .220 in 45 at-bats. Stevenson, Gilbert, and Beck are gone, so Booker is going to be someone that needs to have a big season. Another guy to keep an eye on the mound is Andrew Lindsay, a right-hander from Charlotte. He didn't pitch last year, and the Vols lost key bullpen arms like Mabry, Ben Joyce, Redmond Walsh, and so Lindsay brings a plus sinker, a cutter, and a slider, and could be leaned on in the back of that bullpen. And we'll wrap it up with Tier 1, the favorite. This is the unanimous top team in the country. Anything less than a national championship will be a disappointment. That's the energy around LSU in 2023. Year 1 of Jay Johnson last year, LSU had a great lineup. They took some time to get rolling and ended up exiting in the regional finals. This offseason, as a result, has been the definition of reloading. It's almost been like Jay Johnson is playing general manager on, MLB The Show or Out of the Park Baseball. Jacob Berry, the 6th overall pick, and Cade Doughty, Eric Rosman, and Paul Gervais got drafted, but the Tigers responded by just adding talent back. So the returning group's anchored by, a probable 1-1 candidate, Dylan Cruz, but they went out and got Ben Nipple of VCU, Tommy White of NC State, UCLA's Thatcher Hurd, Vanderbilt's Christian Little, Air Force's Paul Skeens, bring in the number 1 recruiting class as well, and you have just quite the roster. There's not a ton of questions around LSU. The biggest one is probably they might have 3 freshmen starting in the lineup. Catcher Brady Neal, outfielder Paxton Kling, and Jared Jones DHing. Hitting the SEC in your first year can be quite difficult, and having 3 freshmen in the lineup and still being the number 1 team speaks to both the team's talent and that trio of freshmen's ability. Pretty excited to see what Kling can do. He's got incredibly high upside in the outfield. On the mound, after Skeens and Ty Floyd, Grant Taylor's an arm to keep an eye on. Tigers should have a drastically improved pitching staff. Skeens and Hurd in particular bring quite a bit to the table, but they're going to need steps forward from returnees. Taylor's a guy to keep an eye on. He struck out 39 in 31 innings as a freshman, but he also walked 21. He's up to 97 miles an hour with a cutter and a breaking ball, and could take a big step and pair nicely in that LSU rotation. And that does it. This is a longer video than usual, and it would be quite ironic if 2023 was the first year in a long time that the national championship winner was not among these 31 preseason ranked teams. But we'll just have to see how the season plays out. So thanks for watching. If you stuck around through the whole thing, don't hesitate to like and subscribe if you enjoyed it, and make sure to follow us on Twitter at Friday Starters for more college baseball analysis.